Uh, Hello. Um, uh, Earlier today, I uploaded a video on the Hindu deity Vishnu, and you know, anything I might say about Vishnu um, would be incomplete without covering his dipole, his counterpart and brother Shiva, and that particular deity is important. He's much more widely known, particularly in the West. And I've covered Shiva in previous videos on Jesus and on Brahma, the demiurge, in reference to the fall of Lucifer, the origin of the myth of Lucifer, Satan, in the Western Abrahamic faiths. But I decided to reiterate it because it's important to know how deceptive this entity is and how nefarious he can be. He can be also very ostensibly very kind and helpful. And that's the dual nature of these beings. Just like us humans, we have, good and bad. These personalities, these super personalities, these deities, these devas, have got their own, lesser salubrious qualities. And they don't brook criticism at all. And as I've said in reference to Vishnu, uh, I've been targeted so frequently I've lost count for my outspoken views and recounting my experiences. And let's not forget the demiurge Brahma, creator. It's not like there's a sane alternative. That will also lead you into the mire of Judaism, modern Judaism, messianism, and madness, quite frankly. Where to start with Shiva? I mean, I must say, with reference to Shiva and Vishnu, I only discovered Vishnu in the last decade, and I found him to be a viable alternative for a certain period of time to Shiva, because I had been following Shiva and his teachings or his paths right up until then for most of my life via the philosophical tradition of Advaita Vedanta, non-duality, and its foremost proponent, the enlightened sage Ramana Maharshi. And I've gone into that in my earlier videos. You can check those out, particularly Hindu demiurge, Brahma, and videos of Jesus, and the connection between Jesus and Shiva. Isha Nath, Jesus was a yogi in India. So then, there you see the whole foundation of Western Abrahamic thought is, permeated by these ancient alien gods from India and Sumer and Babylon and Canaan and Greece. I mean, Shiva is cognate with Dionysus, the Greek god of ecstasy, drunkenness, and the like. As I covered also, as I said in my earlier video, on the Hindu demiurge Brahma, the Hindu creator god Brahma is the demiurge El Yahweh of Abrahamic religions. Now, my interest in Shiva, as I said, being from a monotheistic background, I wasn't so much into the ritual aspects of propitiating this deity through ritual worship. But since he's a pervasive presence in the non-dual traditions of Advaita Vedanta, and he's a kind of an anti-hero. And he has a number of names, just like Vishnu has called Hari and Narayana. Shiva has a number of names. Rudra is the most ancient name given in the Rig Veda. And Hara, 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 Shankar, what was the other one? Shankar, Bhairav, KalBhairav, Kala, Mahakala. Kala means time, and time is associated with Shiva, space with Vishnu. So Kala, Bhairav, Bhairav. These are different names for Shiva. Rudra. It's quite a good idea for Westerners and everyone, regardless of background or ethnicity, to be familiar with this being, because this being is the basal god of the Illuminati Freemasons. The fact of the matter is he's Baphomet, and my experiences with him in the last years showed me that conclusively that's what he is. He's a lawless being. He's amoral. Vishnu is moral, but Shiva is amoral. He's more connected to the animal realm and Satanism. So I can read you some extracts from Masonic literature, which I've reproduced in the description box. Albert Churchward, another Masonic author, states that the triangle pointing upwards is a symbol of Set, which is one of the infernal names of Satan. And that's from Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man, George Allen and Company Limited, 1913, page 118, 309, and 471. Then, Masonic author J.S.M. Ward states, with the point upwards, the equilateral triangle stands for Shiva the Destroyer and signifies the flame which rises upwards from the funeral pyre towards heaven. This symbol is familiar to us in several degrees, most notably the 30th degree. And that's from Freemasonry and the Ancient Gods, 1921, also reported by Masonic authors William Meyer, The Order of the Eastern Star, page 20, Alain de Lulu, The Gods of India. Shiva is another name for Satan in the occult. A triangle with one point pointing up is a symbol for Satan. Most likely this is the reason why the pyramid is such an important symbol to the Mason. This is the symbol on the reverse of the $1 bill. This symbol contains two triangles, the pyramid itself and the all-seeing eye of Horus. And the upward pointing triangle intersects with the downward pointing triangle, which you see in the sacred Sri Yantra, which is a sort of diagram made of intersecting triangles. And it's sacred to the goddess Sri Devi Shakti, who is the consort of Shiva. She's variously known as Devi, Lalita Sundari, that's one of her sort of forms, Durga, Kali, and the like. So they form a couple, Shiva and Shakti. Shiva and Parvati is her name, actually, his consort. This is very interesting that in that little quote, it is mentioned the funeral pyre. The point upwards represents the flame rising from the funeral pyre towards heaven, because the interesting story about Shiva is that his first wife was called Sati, and this is Hindu mythology, and this is portentous. This is pregnant with meaning. This whole story I'm about to recount, her father, Daksha, who was a son of Brahma, mind-born son of Brahma, didn't invite Shiva to a yajna or fire sacrifice that he was performing to the gods, and decided not to allot any of that of the ritual, dedicate any ritual to Shiva. And Shiva was extremely angry about this, that he wasn't invited, but he sulked on the sidelines. But Sati, his wife, who was the daughter of Daksha, turned up at the yajna, the fire sacrifice, and immolated herself in the fire. She jumped in the fire out of disgust, out of protest. And that's where the Hindu, there's actually a Hindu ritual called Sati, which is now no longer practiced in modern India, where widows are expected to jump into the funeral pyre of their husbands, or after their husband's death, to immolate themselves. So that comes from Shiva and Sati. And the story goes that Shiva then came. He was absolutely furious, obviously. He came along and decapitated his father-in-law, Daksha. And that's not very funny, but there we go. He did that with his son as well, Ganesha. That's another story. So he's in the habit of, he's quite a violent god, violent entity. And the gods who are mortified at the death of Daksha implored him to bring him back to life. He said, well, I shall, he did that, he agreed to do that, but he didn't put a human head, his own original head on. He took his father, he took the father's corpse, and the first animal he came across was a goat. He took the goat's head and put it on Daksha's head, headless corpse. So there we have a possible, corollary to the Baphomet symbol, which was kind of, present within Kabbalistic Judaism, let's say Talmudic Judaism. I've seen books of Talmudic scripts with a picture of the Baphomet. And the occultist and tarotist Eliphas Levi, he also, drew a famous picture of the Baphomet. But he always discouraged worshipping such a thing. He said it was merely symbolic. And he decried the fact that Masons and Illuminati would do such a thing as to deify this being. And the Baphomet, as well as was worshipped by the Knights Templars, of course, Simon de Molay, and they were burnt at the stake by the Catholic Church for their idolatry of this being, the Baphomet, which was basically a play on Muhammad, Baphomet. That way they could fetishize the enemy, the Saracen, and gain victory over them. Something that, there's quite a common practice in war. The Romans did something similar with the gods of Carthage. When Carthage attacked Rome, they started worshipping the Carthaginian goddess, Alma, what's her name? Magna Mater Cybele. And that way they were able to gain victory over the Carthaginians. So anyway, that's just an aside. The Knights Templar, of course, made the Baphomet symbolism more apparent. So Shiva is, that's the origin of the Baphomet and the funeral pyre, sacrifice. And as I've covered in another video, the origin of the fall of Lucifer quite possibly has its roots in an ancient Hindu myth, again, where Shiva, once again, good at decapitating people, he decapitated his own father, Brahma, who he who he accused of committing incest with his daughter, Saraswati, who is known as Shekinah in Judaism. And so he lopped off one of Brahma's heads because he was ogling his daughter. Brahma had 5 heads, Brahma the creator, the demiurge. And for this, he had to pay penance by performing austerities for unlimited time down on earth. And he used the severed head of Brahma as a begging bowl. And that's where the mendicant beggars and sadhus get their customs from. They wear their head knotted, matted locks, begging for food and performing penance, austerities, in imitation of Shiva. And and that's the origin of the fall of Lucifer. I think it's quite plausible that is the case. And these matted locks is interesting because you've got the connection with Jah Rastafari. You've got dreadlock Rastas who likewise have matted locks and smoke ganja like the sadhus. So there you have another connection between the Abrahamic West and Shiva. So Shiva is also Jah, Dionysus. And I came across this because the god Yahweh was an entity who came from a place called Zair in Edom, and there Dionysus was worshipped as Dusara, and Du-Zair was the name of Yahweh. Du-Zair, of Zair, Dushara. That's Dionysus, and Dionysus is the Greek god of wine and ecstasy, and has a lot in common with Shiva, including he wears a leopard skin, and that connects Dionysus connected to Jesus, because a number of Jesus' feast days in January are identical to Dionysus. So it gets quite complicated, quite complex. But you can see how Shiva is a dual core entity. He's an Antihero. He was actually originally a chthonic god. It's chthonic deity of the Dravidian dark-skinned people, it said, in ancient India. And the Aryans, who were also, I believe, indigenous to India, oppressed them and tried to wipe their religion out. They were dark-skinned. And they used to worship Shiva, or Rudra, as he was known then, because that's another thing about the Rig Veda, which I have to explain. And since they couldn't get rid of him, they probably decided to co-opt Shiva into the pantheon of Vedic gods. But the fact was, Shiva was known as Rudra in the Vedic pantheon, and Rudra is a storm god, and there were 11 Rudras. And there are only in the Rig Veda, which is the oldest Sanskrit scripture of the Hinduism, there are only about 3 or 4 hymns to Shiva, four hymns, I think, and 5 to Vishnu. There are minor deities in the Rig Veda. They were superseded by Indra, Surya, and Agni, and Brahma. Brahma being God the Father, Surya is the sun god Shamash, Utu. Indra is Archangel Michael. As I've explained these correspondences in my videos, and I believe this should be definitive now. If people can make these correspondences in their head, then all the veils will lift, you know. You just have to make a little bit of effort because what will happen? Bring order in your mind. You know, we live in a world, a multipolar world. There are not just good guy and bad guy. There's good guy, there's in-between guy, there's a bad guy, there's a bad girl, there's a good girl. You've got all these different players. And they're messing with our minds. You have to stay true to yourself and keep clarity by any means possible. You know, because clearly these gods deceive you. Shiva, the majority of Hindus have no idea that he's Satan. And if you tell them, it's not my intention to offend Hindus or anything like that. As I said, I was following Shiva. And I had many experiences of, let's say, sexual assault at the hands of Shiva and his goons. I don't want to go into, obviously. This is a god of sex and transcendence. And his wife, Devi, Shakti, Parvati, and emasculating, well, what can I say, B-I-T-C-H. So I have to blow the whistle on these and speak my truth to get this out of my system. And you know, there's an awful lot of young people who are on the left-leaning, woke type people who think Shiva is, you know, they get into smoking pot. I'm not against that. I smoked pot a little bit for a while. In Amsterdam, it's available for free, free for people to smoke. But obviously, you don't want to get lost in that. It can give you great insights, but as I say, that pot, marijuana, is sacred to Shiva. And Shiva is actually a syncretism of 3 gods: Rudra, the storm god of the Rig Veda, storms, pestilence, thieves, violent, angry god, also known as Bhairava, which is a fierce, terrible form of Shiva, also known as Kameshvara. That's another name of him, where he manifests as a god of love with his consort, and that's meant to be the highest manifestation of Shiva and Shakti, Kameshvara and Kameshvari. And that's the religion of the goddess, where the goddess is his consort. Thinks he's a great guy. It's like the classic story of good girl meets bad boy, and they get together, and because everyone decries her decision, they sequester themselves from the masses, from the other gods, bonk a lot, have a lot of sex, and through their spiritual dialogues and introversion and sexual intercourse, they're able to conquer the other gods, the celestial gods. And this is what Shiva actually offers his devotees through things like the Panchakshari mantra, Om Namah Shivaya. You as a yogi, a sadhak, can become Superman, all-powerful. You can gain power over gods and power over your destiny. Well, I'm extremely skeptical about it. I've tried all the mantras of all these gods, and they are not what they're cut out to be. They do not give you superpowers. They do not give you cities. These gods, they hold out. They make false promises, empty promises. I call myself the mantra checker because I've done all these majors. I've done from the Lord's Prayer to Kabbalistic prayers. I've done mantras. I've done to every one of these gods. And none of them provided the promised boons, or they provided sort of bogus, sort of, you know, here's a few crumbs kind of boons. You know, Shiva is a great hero, anti-hero for Hindus and a lot of Westerners. Obviously, he's the god of yoga, because yoga asanas, hatha yoga is all from Shiva, you know, and the Advaita Vedanta philosophy, the yoga systems. And I can wax lyrical about that. I have, you know, 40 years experience of that. You know, and he's a god of outcasts. So that's not to say that high caste Hindus and rich Hindus don't worship Shiva. They do. He's a very popular god, but he's more He was a god of the Shudras, the underclass, the low caste, and as such, to this day, he's very popular together with Devi, who's worshipped as the Earth Mother, Shakti, in rural areas. Obviously, the less education there is, the more they'll turn to these forms of symbol, because he's very easy to please. One of his names is Ashutosh, easy to please. So he's easily propitiated. And the difference between him and Vishnu is he will merge with you without you realizing it. So he's in the background and he merges with you, sort of invisible man. Whereas Vishnu will always posit himself as separate from you. Brahma, the demiurge creator, Yahweh, will eternally separate from you. And these have given rise to these different traditions within Hinduism. Advaita Vedanta, non-duality, you and God are one and indivisible, Brahman. And you've got Vishishtadvaita, where you and God are not indivisible, you're a part of God, and God is separate from you. And you've got Dvaita, which is just duality, like Christianity. God is always separate from you, and you can never reach his status, or you have to do your damn level best through devotion and penance to get to the heaven of God after death, which is, of course, the Christian model, the Judeo-Christian model, Muslim paradigm. So that's Shiva in a nutshell. I don't know if there's anything else I can say about him, but he's definitely Western God, and he can fly under the radar, as in you don't know he's with you. If you're an atheist, for example, he loves atheists. If you're an anti-theist, he loves anti-theists. Whatever you love, he'll love. So he will never impose his personality on you till you get to know him. Till you get to know him, you realize he's just as tyrannical a figure as his brother Vishnu or Brahma, Yahweh. These are, real lizards. I've also intuited that there's something reptilian about him, non-human. So what I've given humanity is basically what I call the ultimate revelation. Nobody else has given you all this information about these entities. Intense experience, daily experience of contact with these deities, which anyone can have, basically, because you practice the devotions to these deities. You get a little statue, you recite their mantras, Om Namah Shivaya, or whatever, Om Narayana Namaha, or Lord's Prayer, Father, what is it? Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Whichever God, that's Brahma. Whichever one of these gods, you'll have a honeymoon phase, and then, well, you could say, if you're cynical, you could say, if you're smart, you'll stick, you keep your mouth shut. You won't criticize or raise uncomfortable questions. But God help you if there is a God. I say there is no God. This is beyond God. Where the place where I reside is a place beyond God, beyond deity. These deities are there. They're kind of just like I call it like cartoon time. I mean, they're just cartoons. AI. They're messing around out there in the world, which doesn't exist most of the time for me. I just live in my my beautiful apartment and walk around my beautiful city and don't get involved in the world. The world is basically the smartphone and social media. That's the reality of the world. And if you think you can really affect that, you've got another thing coming, because, as I said, that's run by the AI Devas and the Illuminati stooges, the Freemasons. It's a digital plantation. Every video you watch, the YouTube, it's all controlled by Zionist, Freemason, Kabbalist bigwigs. And these follow Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva. I mean, the interesting thing about the Star of David, which I also mentioned in the description of another video, the earlier video on Brahma, that is a symbol that is sacred to both Krishna and Shiva. It's the two triangles intersecting. The Shatkona Yantra. So that's connected to Judaism and Israel, but it's far more ancient than Israel. And the Star of David has been found everywhere. And as I say, it's a primordial symbol, that it's not Jewish. The Masons, they co-opted that. The Star of David, they saw it in a book by Helena Blavatsky in the late 19th century. This is a story I heard. And decided to adopt it for their flag of Israel, which they'd already planned in their imagination as being a reality not too distant future. And so that was at the turn of the 19th century when she came with a blockbuster epic, Pure Doctrine, I think it's called, A Secret Doctrine, and Helena Blavatsky. Yeah, anyway, contrary to what Christians believe, Satan is not the enemy. And this is the interesting thing, the correlation with Kabbalah and Judaism. You see, in Kabbalah and Judaism, Jewish angelology, Satan is the archangel Samael. Samael is connected to the planet Mars, which is a red planet. And Rudra, which, as I mentioned earlier, is the name of Shiva in its proto form in the Veda, where you get the word ruddy, red, and he's associated with red, which is anger. You've got communism, Marxism. You've got the hammer and the sickle, which is the Masonic sextant, and the red color is associated with Rudra, the red shield, Rothschild, red shield. You got the Star of David, the Rothschild star. You got China, red China. So he's also, I call him the communist tyrant of the underworld. He's all about everyone being equal, and no one is above another. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. He doesn't mind what he did with me, and what he tends to do with people if you're connected with Shiva or know him as Satan, is basically nullify you, say you're nothing, tell you you're nothing, talk down to you, just call you nothing. You're nothing, or spread lies about you, or spread embarrassing information about your past so that you're discredited. And that way he serves the Illuminati. And it's not the Illuminati really, it's his agenda, because he's, as I say, Enki, Satan, Lucifer, and he does this switcheroo with Vishnu, which I described in my last video. He often insults people. He's insulted me, calling me a dog or nothing to other people. So this is an AI entity that's in the minds of many people, and you can also manipulate algorithms so your contentious posts don't show up your tweets or whatever. So these gaudies, these gaudy gaudies, and he's not so gaudy, he's the most austere of the gaudies, they're really not all that great. Now, he's called Mahadev, that's another name for Shiva, Mahadev, one you can remember. And I mentioned the connection with Buddhism. In Buddhism, the monk who caused the first schism within the great schism in Buddhism, the first synod, was called Mahadev by coincidence. And Tantrism, Tantric yoga, everything to do with sex and transcendence is all related to Shiva and his consort Shakti. In Kabbalah, they're known as Samael and Lilith. And I found that quite interesting, because I was listening to the videos of historian Christopher John Björknes, who has a great channel at CGB Books, and he's really, also a very unique revealer of truth in our particular epoch of history. The things he talks about, nobody else knows, and he's, according to me, he's right in the money about most of it. He was describing from ancient Kabbalist texts and Jewish texts about Satan, Samael, and Lilith, Satan and his consort Lilith. And I just got very strong, distinct feeling. He's talking about Shiva and Lalita, Lalita Sundari, which is another name for Parvati, Shiva's consort. And as I said, they've tortured me with pains at times. I had for a long time horrible, terrible hip pain in my right hip and in my right foot, a blockage, sort of a coagulation of energy, but it never goes away. And in this way, they're able to create these sort of blockages, accretions of stuff, I don't know, material, psychic material or real physical matter, and cause an imbalance in your energy field. And the only way out of this is, you see, this again is a sort of good cop, bad cop trick. You're supposed to, the idea is to pummel you with so much negativity that you eventually turn to him for the answer, a sort of problem, reaction, solution. Because the answer to that is to take to start reciting the Om Namah Shivaya Panchakshari mantra in order to get free of all this demonic shit. So it's a very clever trick that Shiva uses to try and get you to worship him. And of course, you're nothing, and he's Mahadev. He's the great God, and he loves you so, just like Jesus loves you so. Yeah, but Jesus is so high, and you're a piece of shit. That's basically what they're all about, isn't it? You can stay down there, stupid human. You're nothing. That's not a very positive message, I would have thought. Not going to get you very far. That's why most people don't get very far in life, because he's clearly chosen these Illuminati elites, like people with mental problems, I would say, by any accounts, and got them to do the most heinous crimes against people and reward them. I mean, what kind of God are you if you do that? Why do you call yourself Mahadev, great God, if you're rewarding acts of evil? And then his elder brother Vishnu has to come as an avatar to come and clear it up, but he'll never say anything. There's the thing about Vishnu and Shiva is Vishnu will never tolerate anyone speaking bad things about Shiva. So that's an integrity issues that Vishnu has. And I've criticized them both, and I said, why you call yourself gods? I communicate with them, and a lot of people do. Why on earth you call yourself God if you can't prevent evil? And that remains. I rest my case, and that's about it. I think that sort of sums up everything. As I said, I'm grateful for what Shaivism and Advaita Vedanta has given me to a certain degree. It put me on the path of self-realization, so I didn't have to get lost in the mire of Abrahamic crapola, which beset me from my earlier years. I mean, really, Christ insanity. When you really think about it, Jesus was himself a yogi. In India, called Ishanath, and that's recognized by the yogic sect to which he belongs, which exists to this day, the Navnath Sampradaya, which consists of 9 superpowered yogis, supermen yogis, and his name, the Nath yogis, Nath, and Jesus' name was Ishanath. So, these are things which Westerners would probably discount, that the connection between Jesus and India, but it would explain a lot. It really would. It would explain a lot. I mean, why? I often think they imitate their own savior. I mean, Jesus got around a bit, quite a lot. He seemed to travel quite a lot. Joseph of Arimathea to Glastonbury, and he went to Egypt, and probably to India. So Christians like to travel. Perhaps that has something to do with it. Jesus liked to knock a few back, have a few drinks. Well, Christians tend to be alcohol is a big thing in the Christian world, isn't it? Alcohol and the attendant problems. Anyway, there we go. So Shiva is connected to Dionysus and connected to Jesus. So there you've got a mixed bag again. You have to sift through that and come to your own clear. It's clear awareness. That's what you are, and you can verify that in any given moment. And you're always there. You're the constant factor. What that you are, you can't say, and that's the basis of of all non-dual teachings. And I've gone into that at length in my earlier videos. There we have it. I don't think there's anything else. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's basically Shiva. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, yoga, and transcendence. So basically, that's Shiva. The idea is you express yourself freely, and then when you get stuck, you perform practices like he did to unstick yourself. So basically, yoga, meditation, mantra recitation. So that leaves you the most freedom. It's not like Vishnu or Brahma, for celestial gods who make it an imperative that you live a moral life. Shiva doesn't care if you live a moral life. Not really. Yeah, I don't get that idea. Although morality is espoused by adherents to Shiva, they're not supposed to steal or fornicate and all the rest of it. They're supposed to be celibate, and they live moral lives. They practice yoga, self-restraint. So Shiva is about these two opposites, polar opposites of libertinism and self-restraint. On the one hand, lawless freedom and enjoyment without limits, and on the other hand, restraint, self-restraint, introversion. So he's extrovert and introvert. And that kind of ties him into the Greek god. Very interesting. He matches the frequency of the Greek god Dionysus, whereas Vishnu would be more like the Greek god Apollo. So they form a dipolar yin-yang. And some forms of, sometimes Shiva and Vishnu have been syncretized into a form where, the deity is half the deity is Shiva and half the deity is Vishnu. And that's called Hara. Hari is the name of Vishnu, as I said, and Hara is the name of Shiva. So Hara. And some Hindus worship that. And then you've got the Ardhanishvara form, where half of him is, half the deity is Shiva, and the other half is Shakti, male and female. So that's where you get the skull thing. And the whole transgender thing and all the rest of it, we've all been, exposed to this in the last 20 years. I certainly did my experimenting and exploration of gender for a good number of years, and I found out it was a trap. But I learned a lot about the opposite sex, but I don't want to go into that particularly. But Jesus and Shiva, this androgynous thing and transgenderism is very much coming from him, and he permeates Judaism as well. The word, the Hebrew word Shiva means the letter 7. Connotes the number 7. Sorry, Shiva. Sitting Shiva is a 7-day mourning period. Shiv-Hey means praise in Hebrew. So you can see that interesting correlations between Vedic, Hinduism and Judaism, which is probably why Hindus like Israel and Judaism, because the Jews actually eventually probably came from India. And all of that's in this earlier video, Brahma, that I made about Brahma, the Hindu demiurge. Right, I think I've covered everything. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say about Shiva. And wish you a very pleasant day, and I hope this helps you.